Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the next part of my Great War at Sea Jutland playthrough of the Essen's War scenario. Now when I last left us we were just getting into an engagement with the German Danzig squadron, and just to make life really difficult, both sides were getting into this battle in the teeth of an absolute hoolie. I'm not entirely sure how we're actually maintaining any kind of formation or combat. I know our destroyers certainly aren't, but there was an initial exchange of fire at long range, and by some miracle, hits were scored by both sides. The Russians have slightly got the better of it because although they're outnumbered, they have the significantly more heavily armed ships. And despite the odds against them, the German squadron have decided to stick it out and remain in contact. Now, on the face of it, I'm not sure why they're doing that because they must realize they're up against a superior force. However, it has occurred to me that the squadron which put out from Kiel is not very far away. So if this group of German ships can pin us by keeping us fighting long enough, they may have a chance of trapping us between the two forces. And that is something I do have to think about because so far my mission has been very successful. If you remember, we cornered and sank an old German coast defense battleship. A bit of a relic, that one, so not a huge military success, but a great propaganda one. And then, of course, we did our best to bombard Rostock through the gloom of a terrible storm. So whether we actually hit Rostock or not is another matter entirely. But the fact is we appeared off the German coastline and we lobbed heavy caliber shells in the direction of one of their ports. So that's good enough for me. But anyway, on to round two of the battle as the Germans have decided to stick around. Now, the question is, do either of us want to try closing? I'm happy to remain at long range, but the Germans are going to attempt to get closer this turn, so we are going to have a bit of a roll-off. I'm rolling the blue dice, the Germans are rolling the red, and I'm afraid the Germans get their way. So in an effort to try and do more damage to us, they have closed to short range. Now, they didn't really need to do this, but what it does is it brings their tertiary batteries within. Oh, actually, no, strike that, strike that. There's no good reason for them to do this because in the horrendous weather conditions prevailing, nobody can use their secondary or tertiary guns. Although that said, in the context of their mission, no, I'm sorry, I'm toing and froing now. They must be trying to pin us because getting to close range ensures that if I decide I want to break off the action, I need to back away to long range. I can't just try and escape. So it looks like they are trying to pin me down. So they've managed to come up close to us, which is annoying. And they're going to follow the same pattern of firing they did the last turn. I'm going to follow mine. So I'll do them first. The Wittelsbach and the Wettin are firing at the Andrei Pervozvany. No hits. Zaringen will shoot at Imperator Pavel I and hits me, the cheeky devils. And they've rolled a 10. What have they done to me? What have they done to me? Oh, they've knocked a hull box out. Okay. Not going to thank them for that. Yep, so poor old Imperator Pavel suffers a bit there. Schwaben is going to target Slava. Very narrowly misses her. Mecklenburg suffered damage last turn, so she's actually lost her primary armament and cannot shoot, which is a bit unlucky for her. And lastly, Rune is going to take on the Rurik and hits her. And that is 7, which is a Ooh, a primary gun hit. That's not good. So poor old Rurik takes a primary gun hit. Now, as I say, I'm going to follow my pattern of return fire. So everyone's going to engage corresponding ship from the head of the German line. It does mean Rune will remain unengaged for now, but I think I'll stick to it. Now, you might be wondering why I leave Mecklenburg alone, because she's effectively helpless now, but I find that a tiny bit gamey. I think in these terrible storm conditions, I mean, even on a good day, you'd be hard put to see what damage you'd done to an enemy ship. And for all I know, she's still a potent threat. So for now, the Rurik is going to ignore the rune and carry on battering the Mecklenburg. So let's do this. Andrei Pervozvany will hit Wittelsbach, or she won't. That was an absolutely terrible roll with no hits. Imperator Pavel on Wettin. We have a hit. And that's a 7. Excellent shooting. So the Wettin has now also been deprived of her primary armament. Slava is going to hit Zaringen, or try to, and misses. And Cesarevich is aiming at Schwaben. 3 5s. That was a very tightly bunched salvo, but no dice. And lastly, the poor old Rurik, who, for the final round where she has a primary gunnery rating of 2, will try and damage Mecklenburg again. And she misses, unfortunately. So the number of hits inflicted slightly favours the Germans this turn, but arguably we've done more significant damage because we've effectively knocked a second German battleship out of the fight. Nobody can attempt a withdrawal because we're at close range. And so we enter another round. To be honest, I'm willing to stay, and it looks like the Germans are too, although I am conscious that the time is pressing, and I might actually want to extricate myself from this as soon as I can. So my cunning plan is I'll stick it for another round, see if we can't significantly damage or maybe even sink a couple of these fellows. But after that, regardless of result, I think we will just try and break off, because I feel we've pushed our luck far enough. So over to the Germans. With Wettin's guns knocked out, it's only Wittelsbach that's going to be aiming at the Andrei Pervozvany. So here we go. She misses. Zaringen on Imperator Pavel misses. Schwaben on Slava misses. Mecklenburg can't fire. And Rune on Rurik misses. Not a good round for the Germans. So, Andrei Pervozvany, what are you going to do to the Wittelsbach? Miss her, apparently. Imperator Pavel, anything better on Wettin? A hit. I'll take it. And that's a 10. Ah, we hit her in the hull. Okay. So Wettin takes a fairly solid hit to the hull. Slava on Zaringen also scores a hit. Good shooting, Slava. And that's a 7 for a primary hit. So another German battleship's guns fall silent. And lastly, well, almost lastly, Cesarevich on Schwaben. Another hit. The Russians are doing extraordinarily well. And that's a 4. That's a hit on the secondaries. And lastly, Rurik, down to 1 dice now, will aim at Mecklenburg and hits her incredibly. So 6. The Russians are doing an absolutely superb job with their shooting. So poor old Mecklenburg gets hit in the secondaries. And the Russians have really done well there. So just to back away from the ships for a moment, we can talk a bit of damage. The Germans have been having an absolutely frightful time of it. Wittelsbach is actually in danger of foundering because of the amount of hull boxes she has lost. And of the 5 German battleships, 3 of them are effectively out of the fight due to damage. The Russians have done far better. I mean, we do have some worrying hull hits, which is causing a bit of water ingress. But, I mean, aside from poor Rurik losing half her primary armament, Andrei Pervozvany has been deprived of some of her secondaries. But in this weather, it doesn't matter. So we have the edge in this fight. The question is, are the Germans going to prolong it any further, or am I going to try and make my escape? Do you know what? I think I might actually break off, because we're already 3 rounds in, and although we're battering the Germans, I'm a bit worried about their reinforcements, and I really want to stick to my mission schedule. So I'm going to attempt to open the range. The Germans are going to try and cling to me, so we're going to have to roll off for this. And the Germans managed to stay on me. They're determined fellows, I'll give them that. So we enter a 4th round of combat. I think they're going to succeed in pinning me, So 4th round of combat. We're going to stick to our fire patterns as much as we can. So Wittelsbach is going to rain some lone fire on the Andrei Pervozvany and misses. And then we go straight to poor old Schwaben, who is going to target the Slava, keep the fire coming at her, and she misses. And lastly, Rune will carry on hammering Rurik and misses. Oh dear, that was a bad round. Andrei Pervozvany on Wittelsbach. All miss. Imperator Pavel on Wettin. All miss. Slava on Zaringen. No, nothing. And Cesarevich on Schwaben. No, nothing. Oh dear. Weather must be worsening to an even greater degree. Rurik, see if you can make a hole in Mecklenburg. No, anything but. That was a roll of 1. So round 4 passes with no effective hits on either side. As we get into round 5, I am going to try and extend the range again. I'm getting a bit desperate now. I want to get away from this. And actually, the Germans decide they are going to let me go. I think they've had enough. So they let me extend the range back to long. We'll have to fight another round, but I might be able to disengage after this. So, yeah. The fleets are drawing apart. Wittelsbach is going to keep hammering the Andrei Pervozvany and hits her. Drat. Trust the Germans. We go back to long range and they start scoring hits. Oh, and she's got a 10. That's a hull hit. I'm not so happy about that. And then we get Schwaben trying to hit Slava. She misses. Rune will try to hit Rurik. Misses. Right, one final spit back from me. Andrei Pervozvany on Wittelsbach. We miss. Imperator Pavel on Wettin is a miss. Slava on Zaringen, a hit. And that's 11. Ooh, 2 hull and lose 1 movement. Poor Zaringen. Well, as Zaringen was already a slow ship, that hit renders her dead in the water, which is not good news for the Germans at all. And in fact, actually, that might guarantee my disengagement. So, well done, Cesarevich. Well done, Slava. That was excellent shooting. Finally, Cesarevich on Schwaben. And she hits too. And that's a 9. What does a 9 do? It's a hit on her primary armament. Oh dear, yes. So Schwaben's main armament is knocked out by that hit. And lastly, Rurik is just going to fire an angry shot at Mecklenburg and hits. Good shooting, Rurik. And that's an 8. Knocks out a tertiary gun. Death by 1,000 cuts, it would seem. I am now going to declare a withdrawal, and the Germans are unable to stop me because they have a crippled ship that's dead in the water. That is, of course, the Zaringen, and both Zaringen and Wittelsbach are flooding badly. So we succeed in withdrawing, and because that was only 4 rounds of combat, we are able to make good our escape. Now, a word about duration when you're using the basic as opposed to the advanced combat rules. In the original rules, in the 1990s edition of this game, there was a rule that if you... Oh man, another cat here. Honestly, Oscar. Sorry. There was a rule that if you played 6 rounds of basic game combat, that equated to a full strategic turn. Now, I couldn't find that rule in the updated rule book, but it was a bit weird that to me that you could just play endless combat rounds in the basic game and not waste time. So I decided to resurrect the old 6-turn limit. And that hopefully makes clear why I was desperate to break off before there'd been 6 rounds of combat, which we barely did. So we're back to the situation we were in when the fleet encounter happened. The good thing is the Danzig squadron, I should say, is in no condition to follow me now. So it's simply a matter of seeing if we get away with it. If the disgusting weather holds, I doubt the Germans will sortie any other squadrons. So let's see. So we got away from that. We're in Z40. And we are going to go to Z41. That's my next plotted move. And it is now night time on the 13th of August. So good luck to the Germans if they think they can find us in this pea souper. They are going to try, though. The Kiel squadron is moving into Z39. They might well end up aiding the Danzig squadron if they run into them, but they'll have to be incredibly lucky. Oh yes, and I have to roll for my poor destroyers to see if any of them sink. Let's hope they don't. So I'm just going to roll for the Ilin. She's fine. And my 4 Ukrainers. Oh no, another of my destroyers has foundered. Okay, that was bad. So another of my destroyers has been overcome by the weather and sunk. Meaning I've lost nearly half of what I brought with me. The German destroyers and their capital ships were far more fortunate. They've passed all their rolls, so despite me damaging some of them severely, they're managing to stay afloat in this weather. But yes, I mean, they're close enough to land for it to not be a problem for them. And so a new turn begins, and I'll see whether this cursed weather moderates any. Nope, the weather remains a gale. So as the night wears on, my fleet moves into Y42. I'm trying to regain the open sea and disappear. And the German Kiel squadron, interestingly enough, mirrors my movement. It's almost like they had an inkling of where I'm going to go. The Danzig squadron is going to remain where it is because at this stage they're basically just trying to stay alive and ride out the storm. So we managed to survive that. And it is now the morning of the 14th of August. I have to do more checks for my poor destroyers. Ilin did not roll a 12, thankfully. And now my 3 remaining Ukrainers. No, you've survived. You've survived. Last one. And you've survived. Let's just check the Germans. Yes, God bless German discipline and damage control. They've lost no ships. It just seems to be the Russians who seem to be suffering storm damage endlessly. So it's the morning, and we are now steaming into Y43. Come on, boys, let's just get home in one piece. And the Kiel squadron is making for the Danzig squadron. I wonder if I was right. Maybe they are going to aid them back into port. That suits me just fine, actually. Although it's not recorded in this game, my ships must be low on ammunition by now because we've conducted a bombardment mission. We've fought 2 actions. I think it's probably safe to say that our stocks must be close on 50%. And given that, you know, we you can barely see anything in this P super, and we can only use our main armament if we do run into someone. I think prudence is beginning to overcome valor in my mind. So yep, so we've moved into Y43. I will do the obligatory survival rolls for my destroyers, and then we'll pray for better weather. Ooh, that was close. Okay, I suffer no other losses, and neither do the Germans. But the weather does not moderate. It's still horrible out there. So on into the afternoon. We're going that away. I was wrong. The Kiel squadron, in fact, is not aiding the Danzig squadron. They're just leaving them to get on with it. They just made a bit of a poor guess as to where I was going to be. Destroyer losses. So far, so good. Okay, nobody else has sunk due to the storm. And the weather is finally moderating, so it's no longer a gale, it has dropped to being a storm. Thank goodness. Well, I think both fleets breathe a huge sigh of relief at that point. So yes, thank heavens. As the afternoon of the 14th of August wears on, I continue on my course. I'm making fairly steady progress back home in what I hope is going to stay better weather. You know, it comes to something when you're glad to see it's just a storm. The Kiel squadron is still on the move, but to be honest, they're either being economical with their fuel or they consist entirely of slow ships, which I think will struggle to catch me if that's their best speed. The weather does not change, and we now get into twilight on the 14th of August. I'm heading for W45. Let's create a diplomatic situation by seeking refuge in Swedish waters. I mean, the Germans were violating Swedish waters earlier in the game. Why shouldn't I? Besides, if anyone can spot me in a storm, I'll be amazed. So what of the Germans? Where are they going? Ah, okay. I think they were continuing to play guess when they drafted their fleet orders, so they're actually turning away. Unless they've decided they can't catch me and they're just heading for Stettin anyway. Weather, are you going to moderate? No, you are not. And so it is nightfall. We move on to W46. The Danzig squadron is finally getting underway, and they are heading towards, they must be heading towards Rostock. The Kiel squadron is moving over there. Well, if they can't catch us, maybe they're just trying to make sure we don't double back. I'm not sure why they think I would, but, you know, who can know the mind of the foe? Weather change. Nope, no change in the weather. So we press on. I'm now heading for W47. I was right in my guess. The Danzig squadron is limping into Rostock with the damaged ships in their squadron under tow. I've got to hand it to them. Their gunnery dice rolling was not amazing, but their damage control and they're just keeping their ships afloat in that horrible storm was amazing. So they fought an unequal battle with me, and they brought every single one of their ships back into port. I've got to hand it to the German sailors for that. The untested and unknown Kiel squadron is still heading out after me. But I'm not too bothered about that. No change in the weather, so it's still a storm, and it's now the morning of the 15th of August. The Germans are going to have to hurry up. I don't think they're going to get me, you know. So we're still happily heading northeast. The only German movement is from the Kiel squadron. I wonder if they're going to swap places with the damaged Danzig force and put into... well, they could put into Danzig. They might be heading for Elbing or Memel, for all I know. Weather change. Nope, no change in the weather. We move into the afternoon of the 15th, and I head for V48. The Germans head into X45, and the weather does not change. So, last moments of... Well, no, it's not the last moments of daylight on the 15th, because it's still the third turn of this day, so we're heading to V49. Let's see if we can scare the Germans by keeping them guessing. We'll set a course for Memel and say we're going to hit that too. Germans move to X46. Weather does not change. Right. Twilight of the 15th. And I'm going to stop scaring them by turning northeast again. And the Germans will content themselves with heading northeast as well. Oh dear, and the weather's turned back into a gale. That's really unfortunate. Well, luckily for me, just as the weather starts to get disgusting again, I am going to put back into Libau and drop anchor, although I do need to check for my poor destroyers. No further destroyer losses to bad weather, thankfully, so we do put safely into port. The German track, now that the action is over, I can reveal they were going to do a further sweep as far as W49, and then they were going to do a shallow turn that would have taken them into Danzig. So by that point, I had pretty much escaped them. But there were some variations in that course that I was rolling for. So yes, a very, very successful mission. And the only thing that remains for me now is to count victory points. So the Germans do gain victory points for my lost destroyers, even though they were sunk by the elements rather than German gunfire. So the Germans have a total of 8 victory points for my 2 lost destroyers. Whereas I have a total of 14 for having sunk the Siegfried and having bombarded Rostock. So that's actually quite a satisfying win for the Russians, and we had quite an adventure while we were at it. I did what the Tsar wanted me to. I poked the Kaiser and gave his fleet a drubbing in 2 battles, and possibly hit one of his ports. And in return, all we did was lose 2 small ships, neither of which was all that important. Sorry, destroyers, no offense, but you know what I mean. And yes, so a very creditable result, both strategically and in terms of the victory point. So well done, the Tsarist fleet, and well done, Essen. So that brings this scenario to a close. I really hope you guys enjoyed following that. And as always, thank you so much for the comments. I really, really appreciate those. And I know that some more have rolled in, so I'll be answering those as soon as I can. As always, just wanted to signal my appreciation to my long-suffering veterans who put up with video after video, and yet stay with me. I really appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much. It really makes it worth it, and I really hope that you enjoy this as much as I enjoy making them. As always, to anyone who might be new to my channel, a very warm welcome to you. If it's the Great War at Sea that brought you here, then you're very welcome. Now that the strategic game series is complete, I hope if this is the first of my videos you've watched, I hope you go and check out the earlier phases of this campaign and also the 2 tactical combat videos I did. But yes, if it's wargaming in general that you're here for, then do have a wander around the channel. I hope you find other stuff that you like too. But as always, whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, a very big thank you. I really appreciate your company. It's always most welcome. And do take care until our next meeting. Bye.